Hello Raptors fans, and welcome back to Raptors Report. Today we will be discussing the Toronto Raptors game against the Oklahoma City Thunder. But before we do that, I want to talk about the future of the Toronto Raptors bench. And I want to delve into who are going to be the main players off of the bench, the players that are going to be doing most of the work off of the bench. Because for the past couple of seasons, it's kind of been a one-man show. There's really been only one guy on the team who has done anything of note off of the bench. And he had a good start to the season, but has really tailed off recently. That's been Chris Boucher. Chris Boucher, when he has it going, can score and is a guy that likes to put up a lot of shots. He can get the team energized and provide a lift off of the bench. Fortunately, he has been doing that recently, but he has been doing almost all of the heavy lifting. He has been running the show off of the bench. However, there are a couple of players this season that have shown up off of the bench and made an impact for the Toronto Raptors. And the first guy I want to talk about and really maybe devote a lot of the episode to is Jonathan Mogbo, because he has really come on lately. I have been very impressed with what he was able to accomplish in last night's game against the Oklahoma City Thunder. He was actually the Raptors' leading scorer, if you can believe it. He had 17 points, tied with Barrett for the lead on the team. And they kind of let him cook toward the end of the game. And he kind of caught my attention with some of the things that he was doing. And I want to give him a bit of a spotlight because, as I've alluded to, the past couple of games or so, I have made it an emphasis to bring up the stuff that he does. And I want to give you a little bit of background on Jonathan Mogbo, what his college career was like, because it's a little odd. It's much different than most. So let's get into that. So he played for a different college every single year he was in college. So he went to school for 4 years and he played for a different college every single year. And the reason he did that was because he exceeded expectations every year. So he started off in JUCO, so junior college, where he was not highly recruited. And the reason for that is because he is an undersized big. He's a guy who's 6'6". He looks that. He's got really good measurements in terms of his arm length, and he's a good leaper, and he has quick feet. But the guy is pretty well built, and I suppose he flew under the radars of some scouts just based on his skill set and his size. He started off his college career in a college I'd never heard of, Independence CC, which I suppose CC Community College. Then he went the next year to Northeastern Oklahoma A&M, where he had a standout performance, 14 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 1.5 blocks. They were like, oh, okay, this guy's amazing. So got promoted again, basically, went to Missouri State, and then I guess he turned some heads. He went to the San Francisco Dons, or perhaps he went there because he wanted to take a more active role on the team. Maybe he liked what they were telling him, so he transferred there, and he had kind of a breakout season. He helped propel the Dons to a 23-win season. They were passed over in the NCAA tournament, but he turned some heads. He was a guy that was doing a lot for that team. They gave him a lot of on-ball responsibilities, so being able to handle the ball a lot, being able to distribute the ball a lot. He averaged 3.5 assists, 10 rebounds, 14 points, and 1.5 steals per game on 63% field goal percentage. So he had a really impressive final season, so his senior season. And the Toronto Raptors selected him 31st overall. A lot of people were saying that maybe he was a Nepo pick because he has been childhood friends with Scotty Barnes instead of perhaps a guy like Kyle Filipowski, who was drafted right after him. But he has been very good for the Toronto Raptors off of the bench. And he's put to bed some of the concerns that maybe some of the other fans in the fan base had. I wasn't under the impression that they drafted Scotty's friend and that they wasted a pick to make Scotty happy. I think they'd probably be able to pick him later on in the draft. They had 2 other draft picks that they could have picked him with. If it really was that kind of scenario and he wasn't, seen by other scouts as a good player, then, why not pick him 59th? I wasn't really worried about that, but it was a surprising pick at 31. Tyler Kolek and Kyle Filipowski were both on the board. I like both of those players. But I was happy with the pick once I did a little bit of research and once I got to see him play some games in the NBA. He didn't have a very good summer league, so I was a little iffy on the pick. But since then, and since we've gotten a bigger sample size and I've been able to see what he has been able to do for the Toronto Raptors off of the bench, I've been very pleased with all of the different things that he does on the court, because I think that as a player, he has a very robust game. It is not one-dimensional. He impacts the game on a variety of levels, and he fills a role that has a pretty good track record in the NBA. Energy bigs. Energy bigs are generally smaller bigs who grab offensive rebounds, make hustle plays, and energize teams off of the bench. There are a lot of players who have fit this mold. There are a lot of players, there's different ways to play that position, and it's generally not a high-paying position, but it's something that does fill a niche in the NBA. And a lot of the time they come off of the bench because they aren't as good defensively when it comes to guarding the basket. And most teams start their 7-foot center who guards the basket and then generally has a player similar to that mold coming off of the bench and giving the team a jolt. But when it comes to Jonathan Mogbo, I think he has a little bit more potential than your average energy big. And the biggest reason is the basketball IQ. When you watch him play, you can tell that he is a guy that understands how to play the game. For many energy bigs, they are a bit more one-dimensional. So let's pick a guy, Montrezl Harrell. Montrezl Harrell is a stereotypical energy big. His job and his role when he was playing and got minutes was a guy who could come in, catch lobs, get exciting blocks, bully people under the basket when there wasn't a 7-footer on the floor. That's really kind of where they shine, because they can run in, use their generally big body to throw it around, use their leaping ability to grab boards. Really, the enemy of the energy big is the traditional center, the true center. And the reason for that is because the energy big hates box outs. So when you have a traditional center put their big lumber arms out and kind of form a wall and keep the energy big out, they can't get into the paint, and then their effectiveness goes away. And that was kind of Montrezl Harrell's career. Did his role, he was very good in a bench role. He could score efficiently in the paint, grab rebounds, and go crazy when there wasn't a true traditional center. But then as his career wound down and his legs kind of left him, he wasn't as springy or as athletic, then his career also went away as well. He was pretty one-dimensional. He wasn't a great defender. He relied on his athleticism to block shots. He didn't have that floor game that could elevate his game to the next level. When it comes to Jonathan Mogbo, he's not like that. In that mold, if you're filling that mold, what do you have to do? You have to be athletic. You have to have pretty long arms. You have to have the drive to go and grab those offensive rebounds, get on the offensive glass, and he certainly has that. That is probably one of his biggest strengths as a player, is the fact that when he comes off of the bench, like so many energy bigs do, they go to the offensive glass and they throw their weight around, they try and out-jump people and grab boards, they tip balls out and do that kind of stuff, and he does do that. But what differentiates him from, say, a player like Montrezl Harrell is the fact that he is making a lot of very good reads on both ends of the court. So when he has the ball in his hands and he's face up to the basket, or if he's handling the ball in transition, one of the things that he does very well is passing the ball and making good decisions with the ball. Because a lot of the time, one of the things that catches your eye when you're watching a game is a flashy pass. A pass where a guy threads the needle to an open shooter or to a player under the basket. And Jonathan has done that this season. He's made some very nifty passes that look good. But one of the things that you'd see is just knowing what not to do, knowing not to choose bad options. And that's a hard thing to quantify. Good players make bad choices less often. They know what to do, but they also know what not to do. A guy who just sprung into my mind is a player who is unable to limit their own bad decisions, a guy like Russell Westbrook. And that's always been his Achilles heel, was that he could make this fantastic play, this unbelievable pass, this unbelievable shot, get an unbelievable block or steal, and then come down the court maybe the very next play and make a decision that was baffling. There's just a horrible decision, make a very bad choice. contrasted with somebody like Kyle Lowry, okay, who perhaps did not do all of the flashy stuff that Russell Westbrook did, but when the ball was in his hands, you knew that he was going to not make the bad choice very often. And we came to expect that from our point guards in Toronto, where you watch a player play, you hold them to the Kyle Lowry standard, where they are going to pick and choose between the good and the bad every time down the floor and make the right decision 90% of the time. And when Jonathan Mogbo is on the floor, I am noticing a lot of good decisions, and I am not noticing a lot of bad decisions. And I think that that's something that differentiates him from a lot of energy bigs, where energy bigs are often doing a lot of good stuff on the floor, but they're also doing a lot of bad stuff on the floor. And perhaps contrast that with Chris Boucher, who is another energy big, who kind of does what I was just describing. And while I think that he has improved over the years and he's not making as many bad decisions, he still makes quite a few bad decisions. And to this point in the season, you know, you've been taking the good with the bad because the good has outweighed the bad. And unfortunately, recently, the bad has been outweighing the good. So maybe you can take two of these players and sort of compare and contrast them to one another and see what each brings to the table, because I think that Jonathan Mogbo has a lot of potential. And I think that the ideal standard, the guy who, if he completely pans out and reaches his absolute ceiling, is Draymond Green. Draymond Green is the archetypical pass-first, undersized big who plays really good defense. And if you were to describe what Jonathan Mogbo does on the floor, is that he is a connector, a guy who can make the right pass, make the right play, and then plays excellent defense on the other end. Can move their feet on the perimeter to guard smaller players, and then can guard the basket a little bit, kind of like Draymond Green. Draymond Green has gotten a lot of flack over his career, and personally, in terms of his personality and how he behaves, I'm not a big fan of him. I think that he's very egotistical and a bully. Not a huge fan of him from what I've seen. In terms of his play on the court, it couldn't be further from that evaluation. I think that what he does and what he did for the Golden State Warriors over his career was unbelievable. And if you're not counting Kevin Durant, he was the Golden State Warriors' second best player over their championship years. So if you do count Kevin Durant, then Draymond is third, but if you don't, then he's second. I think he was more important to that team than Clay. And the reason for that was just the fact that he was one of, if not the best defender in the league during his tenure, and he was their point guard, essentially. He was the person who ran most of the plays. He was kind of like Jakob Poeltl in that he was the hub, the passing hub for that team, but also could make very, very good passes and was quite a bit above what Yak is doing for the Raptors this season. But yeah, that's kind of aspirational. Will Mogbo get to that pinnacle of Draymond Green? Probably not, but I'm seeing some flashes there. I wanted to give him a bit of a highlight, especially in light of last night's game, because he was one of the lone bright spots in that game. So maybe we can use that to springboard into the player evaluations. I think Grady Dick had a good game, so let's start with him. Grady Dick had 15 points on 9 shots. He was 4 of 8 from 3. He had 1 rebound, 2 steals, and 1 turnover. And I think that it was a very encouraging first game back for Grady Dick. He was sidelined, of course, with that calf injury. He was really running a lot. And that is the life of a movement shooter in the NBA. You have to be in tip-top physical condition. Steph Curry is one of the best conditioned NBA players of all time, just because of the amount of distance that he covered while he was on the court. In order to punish defenses and get open, you have to be running. And then on the other end, if the opposing team thinks that you're a defensive liability, they are going to target you again and again and again. And that means your workload on both ends is going to be very high. And while I don't think that Grady Dick, I think he's elevated himself above the liability area, he still might be seen as the weak link in the Toronto Raptors defense. So he will probably draw more defensive assignments where he's on ball than some of the other players in the starting lineup. But in terms of his game last night, I think he did a good job of punishing the Oklahoma City Thunder's defense. The Thunder, they were really playing in the passing lanes. And what that means that they were doing a lot of zone, making it difficult, trying to limit the penetration of Scottie Barnes and RJ Barrett. And when you do that, you're going to leave some players open. And it wasn't easy for Grady Dick. He did have to shoot some contested shots. He did have to run off of screens and get himself open. So it wasn't as if he was shooting wide open shots, but he did hit a good number of threes. He hit half of his threes, made 4 threes, got 15 points, and added some spacing to the starting lineup. I think he just had a pretty generically good game. I think that Isaiah Joe is a tough cover for him. Isaiah Joe is also very good at using screens and getting himself open, and I think that that is one of Grady Dick's weaknesses as a defensive player, is that he is okay when it comes to isolation defense. I think that his big weakness is fighting through screens and screen navigation, and there were a couple of times where he was not able to get to Isaiah Joe off of those screens, and Isaiah Joe had a very good night. 16 points on 10 shots. He also made 4 threes. So they kind of canceled each other out. But yeah, I think that Grady had an okay night. And of course, Isaiah Joe is one of the best shooters in the league. And it was kind of downhill from there. We'll go with Scottie Barnes because I think his performance was a little bit more consistent than RJ Barrett. Spoiler alert, I have RJ Barrett third on this list. So Scottie Barnes had 12 points on 13 shots. 12 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 blocks, and 4 turnovers. And this was a very tough game for both of the Raptors ball handlers, both of the Raptors creators. The Oklahoma City Thunder have 2 of the best perimeter defenders in the association, and both of them, they don't even start. I mean, they have Lou Dort, who was unbelievable last night, and then coming off of the bench, they have Alex Caruso. That's crazy. I mean, 2 of the best perimeter defenders in the league. And then Cason Wallace as well, who's also very good. And even Jalen Williams is a really good perimeter defender. So, and then on top of that, yes, they're missing Chet Holmgren, who is a fantastic rim protector. They have Isaiah Hartenstein, who is a really intimidating force on the inside and keeps you one and done. So it was just a tough night, especially when you're missing Jakob Poeltl, one of the guys who is really helping to run the offense. Yak makes things a lot easier for Scottie Barnes in a lot of different ways, and Scottie just could not get into the paint. Kenrich Williams, like God, they have so many really good perimeter defenders, and Kenrich Williams did a really good job with Scottie Barnes. He had the size and the quick hands, and they were really loading it up on Scottie Barnes. It made it very tough for him to drive. The 4 turnovers were because Scottie Barnes was trying to make it happen for his teammates. He was trying to make lobs over the defense to catch guys who are cutting to the rim. The Thunder, when you're playing in a zone, sometimes that could be a way to beat the zone, is with those lob passes to get it inside. And he did connect on some of them, but a lot of them were picked off. And that just happens if you're trying to throw a touchdown pass. Sometimes you throw an interception. And he threw a couple of interceptions last night, although he finished with 8 assists to 4 turnovers. I don't think it was a disastrous night from Scottie, even though he finished with 12 points. The Thunder are simply an elite defensive team, and the Raptors were missing one of their best interior finishers and one of their playmakers, one of the guys who helped Scottie and RJ run the offense in Jakob Poeltl. So not a great night for Scottie Barnes, and it's understandable. RJ Barrett had a really tough night before the 4th quarter. He finished with 17 points on 16 shots with 11 rebounds, 2 assists, a block, and a turnover. And Lou Dort was on RJ Barrett for a good portion of the night, and Lou Dort is just, you saw it if you watched the Canadian national team play, just a unbelievable defender. Like, he can shut guys' water off. So it was a tough night for him against Lou Dort. He was 1 for 10 at a certain point during the game, and then he kind of turned it on in the 4th quarter. I think that the OKC Thunder took their foot off the gas pedal, and he was able to get some buckets then, make his box score not that bad. He was missing his dude. Jakob Poeltl was not playing. He really uses those Jakob Poeltl screens and dribble handoffs very well. That was the Toronto Raptors' bread and butter for the majority of the season. Yak has played almost every game this season. I believe this was his first missed game, and thankfully due to illness. So not an injury thing, but he wasn't in the game. And RJ just did not. He really requires those smart screens, and he plays that two-man game with Jakob Poeltl so brilliantly. And he wasn't able to get those big screens. Jakob Poeltl, I'm sure, at a certain point in the game last night would have been able to screen Dort off of RJ Barrett. And he wasn't there, so RJ didn't have a great game, although he recovered a bit in the fourth quarter. Next up, Ochai Agbaji. Yeah, I would say that Ochai just did not have a very impactful night. He did make a three that looked good. I commented on it, that his stroke looks very good, but he was 1 for 3 from 3. 0 rebounds, 2 assists, no other stats really. Yeah, just kind of one of those invisible nights from Ochai that he has managed to largely avoid this season. And hopefully he can have a bounce back game. Yeah, he was not very effective last night. Bruno Fernando, he played Yak's role last night not very well. I'm not going to say it was like a horrible performance by his standards. I've seen he's had worse, where he doesn't do anything good. He had a couple of blocks. He had 4 points. He didn't miss a shot. 7 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal. 3 turnovers, which is not good in 19 minutes. But when you see the contrast between what Jakob Poeltl does for the Toronto Raptors and Bruno Fernando, the difference is stark. Jakob Poeltl makes the correct decision with the ball in his hands. He is doing a fantastic job with the dribble handoffs. He knows how to screen players to get the maximum amount of space for the ball handler. He has that floater that lets him be available for interior passes. He gets himself into that nice spot where it's very difficult for defenses to get to him without helping off of shooters. Bruno Fernando is just not even touching that. He's not doing that. You don't want Bruno Fernando to have the ball in his hands. You can't do any of the plays that the Toronto Raptors like to do when Jakob Poeltl is on the floor. He simply was not effective in the role that the Toronto Raptors put him in last night, playing with the starters. And I think Darko realized that because in the second half, they started Jonathan Mogbo. Having him in there means that you have more players who can make reads. That is just Jakob Poeltl's one of his best skills as a center. Bruno just simply does not have that ability. And it's not like a huge insult to him. Many bigs don't have that ability. In a bench role where you can come in and score on the inside, block shots, and put up stats, I think that is kind of the role for Bruno. Not playing with the starters and not doing the read and react offense that Darko has implemented. It's simply not really his brand of basketball, and I don't think he did a particularly good job last night, unfortunately. Off of the bench, we'll go straight to Jonathan Mogbo. Already spoke at length about who he is as a player. I think all of that applies, although he didn't get an offensive rebound last night. He only finished with 1 rebound, but they actually let him cook in the second half. And when the game was winding down and both teams went to the bench units to close it out so that they didn't run up the score, I think that they wanted to see what Mogbo was able to do with the ball in his hands. And it was pretty impressive. He made a 3. He was 1 for 1 from 3. He had 17 points on 10 shots. Not high totals, but he did get a stat in every category. 1 rebound, 1 assist, 1 steal, 1 block, 2 turnovers, no fouls. But I think that it looked encouraging. It looked like he can do a little bit more with the ball in his hands. He can handle the ball a little bit, especially when it's in short bursts, and then he can find players on the perimeter, find players inside. I'd like to see him run things a little bit more off of the bench. And I was very pleased with his performance last night. I think he was one of the lone bright spots for the Raptors. Next up, Chris Boucher. Not much to say. He's in a slump. 10 points on 13 shots, 0 for 3 from 3, 6 rebounds, 4 offensive rebounds. So he did do some stuff there. 2 turnovers. I don't think it was a good game for him. I think it was a pretty poor game. RJ Barrett got really frustrated with Boucher. Boucher took a 3 instead of passing him the ball. We are starting to see the other side of the coin with Chris Boucher. He can give you a lift when he's on, and I just need to see him be on more. I can live with the mistakes. I can live with the selfishness. I can live with that kind of stuff if he's more efficient. Just being better, scoring more efficiently. It's really score more efficiently. That's what I want to see. 3 for 13. That's not good. And even, I understand that the Oklahoma City Thunder are a very good defensive team, but It's something that we're starting to see more and more often. So he's got to bounce back. End of story. Davion Mitchell, I've mentioned that when you get anything from him on offense, like even a very small amount, it's usually good enough. Well, he didn't even deliver that. He finished with 0 points on 5 shots, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, 1 turnover. The floor is high, okay? The floor is high for him because he plays such good defense, but you got to give something on offense, and he didn't. So, not a good game. Jamison Battle, he was 2 for 3 from the floor. All of them were threes, and he hit 2 threes, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 turnovers. He got posterized by Cason Wallace. He did the specialist thing. He hit his threes. I can't complain too much. He did what you wanted him to. But I think with all of the ball handling and all of the really good guards on the Thunder, guys who can put pressure on the rim, it's a tough night for Jamison Battle. His foot speed is not very good. You can attack him off of the dribble. So he only played 13 minutes, and I can kind of understand why. The Thunder play a lot of players that Jamison Battle has trouble guarding on the perimeter. Jacoby Walter also played. Not a great night for the rookie. He was 2 of 8 from the floor, had 6 points, went 0 for 4 from 3. He did have 6 rebounds, 3 offensive, 2 assists, and 3 turnovers. And it seems like he's we saw this last season with Grady Dick, where he's playing pretty substantial minutes, 23 minutes, and he can't buy a shot. His 3-point shot has not materialized yet, which is unfortunate. That is kind of what his role should be as a player. I think that's one of the big parts of the Jacoby Walter package, is that you're going to get that shooting, and it just hasn't shown up yet. I'm not going to hyperbolize or get too bent out of shape, because I kind of did that last season with Grady Dick, and we've seen that he's completely turned things around and has become a very good shooter. So we'll give this guy more runway, but I'd like to see him bust out of the snide and start hitting some shots. He did have a game where he shot 50% from 3 just a couple of nights ago. Hopefully he can have another like that. Overall, the Raptors were completely outmatched. I didn't expect them to win this game, and then when the news came in that Jakob Poeltl wasn't playing, I pretty much wrote this one off. I watched the game anyway. I've watched every single Raptors game, including Summer League and preseason and all that kind of stuff for the past couple of years now. Not going to miss this one just because Jakob Poeltl is out. But it was a very tough game. The Raptors were not in it in any way, even though they showed some signs of life in the second half where, some of the guys started getting going. Scotty and RJ had better second halves. Jonathan Mogbo had a good second half. I think that the Thunder just kind of took their foot off of the gas pedal, and they simply outclassed the Raptors. The Thunder are the best team in the league, and a big part of that is their defense. The defense was suffocating. They have elite perimeter defenders, multiple elite perimeter defenders, and then the guys who aren't elite are from very good to good. And then you have all the help defense. These guys are on a string. They know exactly what the coverages are. They know the Raptors' tendencies, that they were covering all of the back cuts that the Raptors like to get. They were playing zone for a lot of the time without a center. And the Raptors, it really solved a lot of what the Raptors were trying to do. And without Jakob Poeltl there to help run the offense, it was dire. It was very dire, and it looked bad. And the only solace that you can take in this kind of a loss, it was a 37-point loss, is that it wasn't worse. It could have been a 40, 50-point blowout. And also that the Thunder are one of the very best teams in the entire league. And the Raptors have some injuries. So there's some excuses the Raptors can give themselves, but it was an ugly game. In terms of the schedule, when I said that the schedule, there were some winnable games, I was referring to some of the other teams that they're going to be facing. And it was also a little time sensitive, because a couple weeks back, I talked about the schedule, and I was like, okay, the Dallas Mavericks, they haven't been playing very well. They're inconsistent. Yeah, they're playing well now. They are playing well now. They are who the Raptors play next. The Mavericks have won 9 of their past 10 games. Luka Doncic has returned. They looked good even without him. They looked better without him, but he's back too. They have Kyrie Irving, who is the number 1 Raptors slayer. Just dominates the Raptors every time he plays. He's been amazing this season. They've got a bunch of really good role players. Quentin Grimes has stepped up and become a really good two-way player. Derek Lively is a rim protector that, you know, he had a huge playoffs for them. They got Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington. Then they've got Klay Thompson, who they picked up this offseason, even though he's kind of washed, but he can still make some threes. They're a veteran team with top-level superstars and really good role players. And they're not struggling anymore, because they were to start the season. Luka Doncic kind of showed up out of shape and didn't look very engaged, so the whole team kind of was slumping. They're not slumping anymore. That's going to be a tough game. And after that, they play the New York Knicks, who were also kind of struggling a little bit when I was talking about the schedule. They are 8-2 over the last 10 games. And yeah, Cat is looking pretty unstoppable. So that'll be a tough game. And then, in a very weird quirk, so you know how I was saying 7-game homestand, because the Raptors were eliminated from the play-in tournament, a game has been added in this little homestand. They're going to be playing the Miami Heat after that, which is very weird. And it's on the road. They're going to be playing Miami on the road. And of course, they're going to be looking for revenge after being beaten pretty convincingly by the Raptors the last time they played. So what was kind of an easier slate, maybe things are starting to look maybe not as good. And I don't think that the Mavericks and the Knicks are going to be as deadly a defensive team as the Oklahoma City Thunder. What we watched yesterday was a masterclass. So I am excited to watch those games, especially if Jakob Poeltl is back. I think that the Raptors will probably show up and show a little bit more spirit in those games. But yeah, that's the video. Hope you got something out of it. What do you think? Jonathan Mogbo, is he a guy with a lot of potential? Are you excited to see what he could develop into? Is he a future Draymond Green, or do you think that they should have picked Kyle Filipowski? Let me know here in the comments, and also on Twitter and Blue Sky, where you can reach me at Raps Report. And if you liked the video, please subscribe, leave a like. That helps in the algorithm. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.